Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, what's up, Ryan?
Good morning. Good morning. The Cowboys. We've been talking about them early on here. You watched it play out yesterday. What's happened to them? 3-0 to start, Super Bowl contenders, everybody thought, and now they lose 3 in a row and to the Jets yesterday. Where are they at right now? Where are they going?
Yeah, it's the talk right now. I mean, I think they played some pretty bad teams early on, and they came out like gangbusters. I think that week one, we weren't really sure what kind of offense they were going to have. Dak Prescott was the top story in the news because of his contract situation, Zeke and the holdout and all that stuff. And they came out amazing. I think they were averaging like 32 points a game. And then it's been this slow, steady decline. And I think there's a lot of blame to go around, but losing to the Jets, sometimes you can overlook a team. And I think the week before, I don't know that I've seen a team look as bad as the Jets looked on film. And so I think, the Cowboys are human. They probably thought they were just going to come in there and roll over them, and they found themselves in a dogfight, and they didn't have answers for the blitz, and their defense is continuing to play poorly. They're bad in field position. Their defense isn't getting any takeaways. And, their offense struggled to come up with a play in the red zone when they needed it most.
So the NFC is a crapshoot, right? San Francisco clearly has become the team, but are the Saints, with Teddy Bridgewater, knowing that Drew Brees may come back, are they, do you think, the team to beat in the NFC?
Well, I had picked the Saints to go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl this year. And, I did that not knowing that Drew Brees would get hurt. So when he got hurt, I wasn't feeling great about my pick. I was feeling like, shoot, man, that's some bad luck. It's kind of like when you draft somebody on your fantasy team and you're hoping for this great year and you're sure the guy's a great player. And then all of a sudden, he's out. It's like, dang, there goes the whole season. There goes the year. But the Saints did something that not a lot of teams do. They've invested in the quarterback position. A lot of people talk about how Sean Payton's in love with Taysom Hill. He tells everybody that'll listen, he's the next Steve Young. We're on to something. Well, if he's the next Steve Young, why is Teddy Bridgewater one of the highest paid backups in the league? They've overinvested in the quarterback position. And, this is a team that has Drew Brees, a first ballot Hall of Famer, on their roster. So the fact that they did is huge for them right now. It's a reason that they're 5-1. It's a reason that they're undefeated at home, undefeated in their division. And people are saying this is the team to beat. And, like you mentioned, I think the 49ers will have something to say about that. I think the Seahawks will have something to say about that. And even in their own division, I think the Carolina Panthers have quietly, won 4 in a row with their backup quarterback who, from what I have heard, a lot of people feel like Kyle Allen gives them a better chance to win than a not 100% Cam Newton. So I think this NFC race is still pretty good. And by the way, there's a guy named Aaron Rodgers that's going to have something to say about it as well.
Yeah, he goes at it tonight against the Detroit Lions and Matthew Stafford. Talking about those Saints team, do they have a really good chance, though, to go undefeated into their bye week with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback? I mean, Arizona and I think Chicago are there at Chicago, and then Arizona in the next 2 weeks before the bye. I mean, that's if they look at that and they walk away with an undefeated record with Teddy Bridgewater, the starting quarterback, the sky's the limit for this football team.
Yeah, I agree, but I really think they can't fall for that trap. They got to look at it as one game at a time. They're 5-1, but they very easily could have lost a bunch of these games. I was at that Monday Night Football game against Houston. That they could have lost that game 100 different ways. And, they were really fortunate that their special teams is so good. And, they were able to kick a game winner, I believe, at the end. And, I think they can't fall for the trap of looking ahead. And I'll say this, the guy that really makes it all go for me is Alvin Kamara. He's one of the most underrated guys in the league. And to call him underrated is probably kind of wild because I think most people know how good he is. But when he's not out on the field, they are a different team. I go back to the game last year against Dallas. This is kind of when people started getting hot on Dallas. All of a sudden, it was a Thursday night game. Alvin Kamara gets knocked out of the game, and that's when they had Mark Ingram. And it was just a completely different look. It was a completely different team. And I think Latavius Murray's a good player. Like, I think there's some good players out there, but without Alvin Kamara, I just don't think they're as explosive and as dangerous as they are with him. With him, they're definitely a Super Bowl contender, no doubt about it. Without him, I don't know if they're the same.
You talked to us about Kyle Allen a little bit and how he's performed in the absence of Cam Newton. Is that one of the examples you talk about when Cam Newton comes back healthy? Has Kyle Allen pulled a Tom Brady, Drew Bledsoe scenario here? Is he going to be the guy when Cam Newton comes back healthy?
I mean, I do think, like, if you just look at the numbers, okay? So Cam starts the year, he's 0-2. He's got no touchdowns. He's got a pick. He's completing about half of his passes. And then Kyle Allen comes in and runs Norv Turner's offense the way that it's supposed to be run, not muscling through it or anything like that, just on-time, accurate passes in the system. And he's 4-0. He's got 7 touchdown passes, no interceptions, 66 completion percentage. I mean, those are just the numbers. But then there's an intangible factor that I think Cam Newton brings. And he's always brought. You know, it's like, wow, he's such a weapon as a runner. It's hard to defend in the red zone. But the other intangible that, you know, I don't know how you measure it, what's that locker room want? Like, what is that locker room? Who does that locker room really want to be teammates with, lockstep with? I've never been teammates with Cam. But he just strikes me as an odd individual. And maybe his teammates, like, connect with him in a way that I don't understand, and that's fine. And they'll say all the right things publicly. But, like, you know, Ryan, like, you're in a locker room with a guy, it's like, yeah, this is the kind of guy I know I can count on. I know that his first priority is us winning all the time. And, like, he's going to do whatever he can do. And, like, maybe that's Cam, and maybe that's Cam in that locker room. But there's a chance that it's not. And so when you get a guy playing the way that Kyle Allen's been playing, he's a minimum salary guy. He's basically free to the team on a rookie deal. And then you've got a guy that's making like $19 million a year, and he's into his YouTube channel and all this other stuff. Like, there's probably a situation where it might split the team, or the team might look at it as an opportunity. And now I'm not trying to take a shot at Cam at all. A similar thing happened with Tony Romo and Dak Prescott once upon a time. Tony Romo was making about $16 million a year. Dak Prescott was on a rookie deal. He's cheaper. The team's like, hey, you know, we like you both, but we can ride with this guy. Like, this guy will work. And so, like, you know, who knows? I guess from my perspective, sitting back and watching it, not being in that locker room, it would not surprise me at all if by the end of the year they had a different quarterback. If the other guy had the hot hand, it wouldn't surprise me.
We're talking to Matt Hasselbeck, ESPN, on the NFL. You played quarterback for all those years, and you were a starter, and you were a backup. And at any point did I look at you and think, you know, diva, or just so much outside the realm of playing the quarterback position. And to your point, we just see Cam Newton show up in the outfits. We see him show up on YouTube with his cigar and his wine. And, I mean, all the things that go into it plays into effect what you just said. Kyle Allen shows up in his Subaru hatchback and, you know, jumps out and goes 4-0. How the rest of that team isn't just vibing off that when it comes to the opportunity for Cam playing later in the year, I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, and that's a question really for the guys in the locker room more than it is for me. But I know this: whatever they say publicly, that is not true. Like you say what you're supposed to say publicly. I shouldn't say it's not true. It's not necessarily true, and I think that's true for every team in the NFL. Like, you say what you're supposed to say about your teammates, about your coach, about the opponent. Hey, what do you got? What do you think about this team right here? Oh, they're a well-coached team. They're they're a really good opponent. But you watch the film, like, you know the truth. Or even like the guys that are on a team, it's like, hey, do you think that the head coach should be fired? No, absolutely not. He's great. He's the best. It's like, that's not necessarily how you really feel. So there is a real answer there. I don't know what it is, but just from a distance, I think the door is open for a team that's won 4 in a row, and they've got high aspirations. They're trying to chase those New Orleans Saints, and teams around the league have been playing well with backup quarterbacks.
Speaking of the quarterback position, we saw a matchup between Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes this weekend, and it's a bit of an overreaction Monday, but could we start to say the reigning MVP and Mitchell Trubisky playing into the playoffs a year ago with that Chicago team? Could we be starting to see Deshaun Watson as possibly the best quarterback drafted in that 2017 draft?
Well, I mean, I love Deshaun Watson. I'm not ready to say that. I actually picked the Saints and the Texans as my Super Bowl teams. I mean, I feel strongly about Deshaun Watson, but I still think Patrick Mahomes is in a category of his own. With that being said, it's really impressive what Houston's doing right now. Bill O'Brien has quietly, year after year after year, done a nice job in Houston. Deshaun Watson, I did a piece, kind of a little segment on him on Sunday NFL Countdown this week. Basically how people attacked him last year. They basically said, hey, listen, we can confuse him at the line of scrimmage. We can get him to try to process a ton of information in a short amount of time. We can cause him to hold the ball, and we can get sacks. We can get them behind the chains. This year, he has shown up. He has done the work. He knows exactly where to go with the ball. He's recognizing fronts. He's recognizing blitzes from linebackers, from safeties, from DBs, and he's making you pay. I go back to that Monday Night Football game, Saints versus Texans, and they brought the house. Like, they brought free safety pressure in a prevent defense situation. He made them pay. I mean, he put his team on his back and said, all right, let's go win this thing. And they didn't end up getting the win, but it wasn't because of Deshaun Watson. So, I think Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, that's like this matchup that we're going to see for the next 8 to 10 years. This Brady versus Manning. Those two teams, Houston, Kansas City, I think they've got bright futures. And, Houston very well may have the better team this year. And I think there's a lot of people that are picking the Chiefs. But Houston has been incredibly impressive.
Yeah, and pretty much doing it without DeAndre Hopkins. I think that's been even more impressive with what he's doing. I want to get you out of here on this one. Matt Hasselbeck from ESPN. Baker Mayfield, the hype, everything going in, not only the hype, but his vocal assertions and the bravado that he's shown. I always thought that Cleveland needed somebody like that, but when things started to maybe turn and not live up to expectations, there's going to be some blowback, and we're kind of starting to see that yesterday, putting some blame on the officials, not necessarily taking a solid look in the mirror. What have you seen from Baker so far, and what do you expect coming out of the bye week in a couple weeks?
Yeah. Well, I said this at the beginning of the year with the expectations for Cleveland. Baker Mayfield was going to be challenged this year in a way that he's probably never been challenged before. And it wasn't going to be with a football in his hands. So much of being a franchise quarterback and being sort of the leader in that huddle is what you do when the ball's not in your hands. And I've actually been very impressed with him on how he's handled the media. He shut things down when it was time to shut them down. He's deflected when it was time to deflect. But they have to find a way to play better football. That's really the bottom line. And I think that coaching staff needs to probably just come together and figure out what that identity of the team is going to be. I think that they've got a little bit too distracted by the weapons that they have outside with the wide receiver group. And they've kind of forgot. It feels like a team that doesn't have a solid foundation. It feels like a team that is built up on kind of like a fantasy football mindset, more so than a blue-collar work ethic. Just like we're gonna start everything with the run game. We're gonna look at everything through the lens of the offensive line. We're gonna protect our quarterback early in the games. Like I haven't seen that high completion percentage style of offense that we saw last year. When they were just treating Baker like he was a young quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback, but we can't forget that he's still a young quarterback maturing. And so what's missing for him, I think that coaching staff has to get on the same page. And I'm not in those meetings necessarily, obviously, but whatever it is, Like, they have to find a way to just help him get comfortable in games instead of holding on to the ball too long and forcing throws and then being inaccurate on other throws. Like, there's something where you just got to treat him more like Mike Holmgren used to always say this. With all my quarterbacks, you have to walk before you can run. And I think that they just came out like gangbusters thinking like, oh, we're the favorites to win the division. Here's what we're going to do. We're just going to go for it. And I really think that that mindset of like walk before you run would have served this team better. And they probably would be 3-3 right now instead of 2-4. And it wouldn't feel like the sky is falling. But I'll just end with this, Ryan. I don't think it's over for the Cleveland Browns. I actually think that they can still rally and get it together. I like their schedule at the end, and they're not out of it.
Well, that's making everybody in Cleveland pretty happy to hear that coming from you. Matt Hasselbeck from ESPN. Hey, buddy, thanks for doing this on my guest hosting day. Have a great call this week, Stanford, UCLA. I'll be listening on Thursday night.
Good stuff, man. Thank you. See ya.
Matt Hasselbeck, everybody from ESPN.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download the Rich Eisen Show app.